More than 160, 170 people are dead. More than 60,000 people are rendered homeless. More than 300 churches have been burnt and destroyed. This is a religious minority in India whose places of worship have been destroyed. More than 200 villages have been burned. There's no business for the Prime Minister of India to not go there. After 90 days or after 70 days, there's no reason why there should be an information ban. The center has done nothing. For the Home Ministry to tell an RTI activist in a reply that we have no information on whether Article 355 has been imposed in Manipur or not. What does it mean? Most of the people who are coming injured into hospitals are coming with automatic weapons, bullet wounds. Has the state government taken any effective steps to get the weapons back? No. What the Chief Justice has said in the court also counters the political argument, that Mr. Modi and his ministers have been making, where they've been pointing to other state governments run by opposition-ruled states, whether in Rajasthan or Chhattisgarh or other places, by saying, what about those states? Why are you looking at incidents of sexual violence only in Manipur? The political directions, both from the center and I believe from the state, to create a divide between the two communities by creating a buffer zone has actually cleaved the state into two. But any political solution to the crisis would require rebuilding of bridges, not burning of bridges between the two communities.
Hello and welcome to the News Minute. It's been 91 days since the violence broke out in Manipur and the flames are yet to be doused. The Supreme Court is concerned about this issue while hearing a petition that was filed by the two women who were sexually violated and paraded naked on the streets of Manipur. They have approached the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has come down heavily on the BJP government in Manipur, as well as has also raised certain questions about the way both the union government as well as the state government trying to control the situation. To talk about the situation in Manipur, I have with me Sushant Singh, who is a senior fellow at the Center of Policy Research, who has also served in the Indian Army for 2 decades, had multiple stints in Jammu and Kashmir, who is also a strategic affairs expert, someone who writes about internal security and international relations. Thank you so much for talking to the News Minute, sir. Can you tell us about the situation in Manipur right now, even after 91 days? What exactly is happening on ground? There seems to be some kind of information blockade. We are not privy to all that is happening in Manipur because of the restrictions in place. You must have spoken to people on ground. What exactly is the situation, sir?
Thank you so much, Shabbir. Thank you so much to the News Minute for inviting me. The situation in Manipur continues to remain very tense and very bad. So it is essentially there are two or three aspects to the situation. So one is the humanitarian aspect. The humanitarian aspect, as you are aware, more than 60,000 people were rendered homeless. Some of them have gone to Mizoram, some of them have gone to Myanmar, some of them are in camps in Imphal, and those people are still struggling. More than 200 villages have been burned down. Whatever figure you may want to believe, more than 300 or 350 churches, have also been destroyed and burned down. The schools have not opened so far. There are problems with hospitals, particularly in areas which are Kuki majority areas, whether it is Churachandpur or whether it is areas in the hills. So there is a humanitarian crisis which is still currently on, which is not being addressed adequately by the government. Then there is a security crisis, and the security crisis is essentially one where the two communities are completely at loggerheads with each other, are completely at war with each other. The political directions, both from the center and I believe from the state, to create a divide between the two communities by creating a buffer zone has actually cleaved the state into two. Such is the situation where the state DGP is passing orders that Kuki policemen can actually join duty in areas which are Kuki majority, while Meitei policemen can join duty in areas with a Meitei majority. So you have essentially partitioned the state into two in such a manner that people cannot live with each other. The situation is made worse by the fact that more than 4,500 weapons, which were taken from police armories, whether handed over or looted, are still out in the open. More than 6 lakh rounds are still with the mob. So, you have seen videos, you have seen journalistic reports saying mortars are being fired regularly at night. Harsh Mandar was there and he has written about it. most of the people who are coming injured into hospitals are coming with automatic weapons, bullet wounds, whether it is AK-47, whether it is the self-loading rifle, whether it is the INSAS rifle, whether it is carbine. So the security situation continues to remain very bad, and there is no control over the security situation. This is something which the Supreme Court also alluded to yesterday very clearly in its statement. The CJI, when he spoke in the court, spoke about it. So, in
Well,
these two
that's
aspects,
what I wanted to ask you about the statements that were made by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court remarks are, in a way, crucial because it completely shows that how the state machinery has completely failed. When the Supreme Court says that there is absolutely a breakdown of constitutional machinery, it is a very serious indictment of the state government, as well as to a certain extent the union government as well, because they say that they are running a double engine sarkar, both at the center and at the state level. So, what do you make of these statements? Because the Supreme Court has used words like lethargic, incapable, or unwilling to control the violence. So, these are all the serious words that were used by the Supreme Court. And
so
the
these
Supreme Court has also summoned the DGP of Manipur.
So the Supreme Court's indictment is very strong, is in very strong language to say that there is no police force which exists in the state, that there is no law and order which exists in the state for last 3 months, is essentially saying that the state has completely vanished. And while the state government has completely vanished or abdicated its responsibilities, the center has done nothing. For the Home Ministry to tell an RTI activist in a reply that we have no information on whether Article 355 has been imposed in Manipur or not. What does it mean? If the Union Home Ministry does not know, then who knows whether Article 355 has been imposed or not? And there are reasons why Article 355 and Article 356 exist in India's constitution. They are precisely to deal with these situations. Please remember, whether it was in Punjab, whether it was in Kashmir, whether it has been in Nagaland, whether it is in Mizoram, the Indian state has been very strong in coming down very strongly to bring down the violence and to bring them under direct central rule. But in Manipur, in a situation where president's rule would have been an absolute desirable state with nobody opposing it because of the kind of violence that is going on, the central government, the union government, has not gone down that path. It has, for some reason, chosen to continue with the state government under Mr. Biren Singh. Moreover, what the Chief Justice has said in the court, also counters the political argument, that Mr. Modi and his ministers have been making, where they've been pointing to other state governments run by opposition-ruled states, whether in Rajasthan or Chhattisgarh or other places, by saying, what about those states? Why are you looking at incidents of sexual violence only in Manipur? Of course, there are huge differences, but for the Chief Justice to come out and say that please do not make that argument completely rebuts what the political leadership in India has been doing for some time. And there's one more point I would like to bring out here. The case in Manipur is different. There's been incident of sexual violence and rape, but these are not incidents like which happen every day. These are part of a project where a particular ethnic minority is being targeted by a majoritarian group supported by large sections of the Indian state. And the incidents of sexual violence or targeting of women are part of that larger project. They are not just not just a gender issue. It's an issue which goes beyond gender into other aspects. Because please do not forget, in that many of these cases, it is the Meitei women groups, Meitei women mobs, who have been charged or alleged to have been part of those groups who were cheering while these women were being sexually assaulted, or who actually handed over some of these women to the Meitei mobs. So it's a very, very different situation compared to everyday violence against women in many other states.
But according to the Chief Minister of Manipur, he says that they are trying to protect their territory because foreign forces are trying to grab their territory, and this is just a fight to protect their land. This is a narrative that is being projected there, both in Manipur as well as to a certain extent. This is the narrative that both the BJP as well as the union government is trying to pushed through various sources in almost all debates. This is what the BJP spokesperson speak.
So the idea is essentially that there are some original inhabitants of the land and there are some outsiders, and this is the narrative which you see as part of the larger Hindutva ideology as well. That only Hindus are the original inhabitants of this land, and Muslims are not the or are in some senses outsiders. They do not belong to this country, or the country does not belong to them. We are seeing a version of that in Manipur, where Meitei groups and the state chief minister are saying that this is a Meitei land and Kukis are all outsiders. It's essentially to portray these are not sons of the soil and they have all come from Myanmar. So when Biren Singh says that these are external forces and these are external elements or these are foreign elements, he's essentially calling them to be from Myanmar, to be part of the Chin community or the Kukizo community which lives in these areas. It is unwillingness to accept that Kukis have stayed in India, have been part of this land for a long period of time, and this flows from the larger majoritarian narrative which we have been witnessing in the rest of India over the last decade.
But even after so many days, when the situation is still volatile, the Manipur government has gone ahead and they have started capturing biometric data of illegal immigrants. That is an announcement that was made recently. Do you think that this is going to further escalate the problem, or is this also one of the tactics that is being deployed by the state missionary over there?
So I think the orders for capturing the biometrics were passed to two states, to Mizoram and to Manipur. The Mizoram state government, which is again part of the National Democratic Alliance, did resist it for some time, but even it has conceded that it will start the process of capturing the biometrics of people who have taken refuge in these states. In the case of Manipur, this is going to cause major problems. This is going to cause problems which are going to be bigger than the problems that we witnessed in Assam when the NRC exercise was carried out, because this is an attempt to show that most of the Kuki people, most of the people from Kuki community are not Indian, but are essentially they have come from outside. Now, please do not forget that in the early 90s, in 1993 particularly, there was a major clash between the Kuki community and the Naga community, and a large number of Kuki villages were burnt and destroyed at that point in time. More than 900 Kuki people died. So a lot of those documents which existed at that time have been burnt in those clashes, have been destroyed in those clashes. So a lot of people may actually not have those kind of papers. It's like you did not have, a lot of people did not have those papers in Assam because of floods and natural calamities which happen so regularly. So it is a similar situation in some aspect, because if there's Zoom cultivation, people move and start other new villages. There was violence there. These are very, very rural communities. These are very poor areas. To expect people to be able to show documentation which goes back 2 or 3 or 4 generations, is grossly unfair. And if it is being implemented by a state machinery which is biased against the minority community, against the Kukis, and wants to portray them as outsiders and not belonging to this land, then it is going to be very, very dangerous and going to create a new fault line, where the two sides are the divisions that have been created are not going to be healed. To give an example, Professor Housing, who's a very renowned political science professor, head of department of Hyderabad University. Now, it is being alleged by certain Meitei groups and being published in newspapers in Imphal, that he's not an Indian, that his family, that his documents do not exist. Now, many people may not be aware that the village from which he comes was actually burnt during a Kuki Naga clash in the early 90s. Everything was burnt down from that village of his father, etc. So, it is, how does anyone produce those kind of documents? And if you start questioning that thing, it becomes very, very difficult. And if it is only targeted against one community, if you were to do it against the Meiteis as well, you would find probably a large number of Meiteis who would not have those documents, like we saw in Assam, and where the BJP government said, "Oh, can we walk back on this NRC? We don't accept this NRC because this NRC is saying even Hindus do not have those documents." So it is a similar kind of situation, but when it is targeted only against one community, one particular community, which is already at war with the majority community, already suffering under this regime. This is going to be very, very tricky and very, very difficult, and perhaps very, very dangerous.
Also, Sushant, you spoke about the buffer zones that have been created by the central forces, by the army and the other paramilitary forces there. Uh, this is a temporary arrangement, but what is being done beyond that to try and ensure that this cycle of violence ends somewhere in Manipur?
So the issue of buffer zone, as I said earlier, essentially comes because of the political directions that have been given to the security forces. So the state police is manning the valley, that is the Imphal Valley area, which is Meitei dominated area, while the Assam Rifles and the army are dominating the hills, which are Kuki dominated areas. It is in between these two areas that a buffer zone has been created, which is being manned by the central police forces. The original idea, perhaps, was to somehow, as you rightly said, bring down the level of violence by pushing the two communities apart from each other. But any political solution to the crisis would require rebuilding of bridges, not burning of bridges between the two communities. What this does is it actually burns bridges between the two communities and makes it very difficult to arrive at any rapprochement, any kind of a solution where the two communities can live together and work together. You are cementing those divides. You are making those divides permanent by creating buffer zones. The idea should be to enforce the authority of the state in a manner where the state is trusted by both the communities and some kind of normal life is issued. You do not want creation of ghettos. This cannot be Gujarat 2002 repeated again, where Muslims are pushed into ghettos of their own and Hindus are into areas of their own. You are actually creating a permanent divide between the two communities where the demands from Kuki to have a separate administration will get more credence, more weight, and the status quo as it existed before May 2023 will not be restored. So I think this political direction to the security forces for doing this is not correct, is self-defeating, and is not going to achieve the kind of results that many people expect it to achieve. And that is why, despite these buffer zones existing, violence has not come down over these 90 days.
And one of the reasons is because the armories were looted, or rather, the arms were given to a particular community by the state itself, is what the allegation is. So, what has been done to disarm, both sides, the Meiteis as well as the Kukis? Is there any effort from the state government side, or from the side of the paramilitary forces or the army, to disarm these people who are engaging in a fierce battle?
So, Shabbir, as far as I know, more than 4,500 weapons and more than 6 lakh rounds of ammunition were taken away. Rough estimates suggest that around 3,000 of those weapons were lethal weapons. Essentially, they were not tear gas firing weapons or smoke firing weapons. These include AK-47. These include self-loading rifles. These include INSAS. These include light machine guns. These include mortars. These are serious weaponry which is out with these people along with the ammunition. As per one of the reports, more than 95% of these weapons are with the Meitei mobs, Meitei militias. Less than 5% is with the Kuki groups, and that is also reflected in the nature of violence. So, other than the early steps where an MLA had put a voluntary box for people to actually put the weapons in that box and deposit those weapons, and nothing else has been done. And I do not know, Shabbir, if you are aware that even the MLA who had put that box, after a few days, there were Meitei young men who were coming. Okay, please give us weapons which have been dropped in that box so that we can go and actually use them. So even that idea, that process that people will voluntarily come and deposit the weapons has failed. Has the state government taken any effective steps to get the weapons back? No. Has the army or the Assam Rifles done anything? No, because that would put army and Assam Rifles directly in conflict with Meitei women groups who have been very, very vocal, very, very strong in stopping the army and the Assam Rifles from undertaking many of these steps. And that is something which army clearly seems very reluctant to do at this point in time. So it is highly unlikely that anything would happen so quickly. The state police or the state government is not interested in taking back these weapons or getting back these weapons. Perhaps it is not politically possible for it, with the kind of narrative that it is supporting, to ask for return of those weapons. Please remember that as of yesterday, we are talking on Wednesday. On Tuesday, the police officer in charge of the police station, where the two Kuki women were sexually assaulted and paraded naked, because he was being suspended, and senior police officers wanted to come to that police station, the Meitei women groups had actually blocked and locked that police station. They did not allow senior police officers to reach that police station. So and they said, "Oh, this guy cannot be suspended for what happened that day with those two cookie women." So it is that kind of situation which we are living with. As you remember, in June, the army had to hand over these militants, these which it had apprehended, and one of them was charged for killing 18 soldiers in an ambush, and handed them over back to these Meitei women groups, along with a BJP MLA who was there. And the BJP MLA himself has been charged for some heinous crimes earlier. So this is quite a messy scenario, and as much as people like you and me would want the state to get those weapons back quickly, retrieve those weapons back quickly, there seems to be no strategy in place at this point in time to get those weapons. And it is unlikely that any government which is based out of Imphal would be able to do it. And therefore, it is an imperative that the state government is removed and central rule brought in, where the central forces can then dispassionately go and actively start collecting weapons or force people to give to return those weapons. Otherwise, we are going to see this low level of violence with sudden spikes, which is going to continue in the state of Manipur.
And also, you were talking about, I read your article on foreign policy. You have written about the information blockade. Is this by design, or is this being done to control, violence? Because we remember the entire thing started with the spread of some misinformation. So is that the only reason, or the government just wants to ensure that everything is kept under wraps, everything is under control, no information is spread to the rest of the country?
So if the reason was to control violence, as the government claims it was, then the violence should have come down. The fact that violence did not come down, people were organizing themselves, and as you yourself said, clips were still circulating clearly if they were being used, or rumors were still circulating. So that had clearly failed in its aim. And after 90 days or after 70 days, there's no reason why there should be an information ban. It doesn't work like that. And the fact that we live in digital India, where you can access nothing without having access to digital platforms, to access even government services, to access hospitals, to access schools, Aadhaar, banks, you name it. Even NREGA, people cannot actually do NREGA without registering on an app, putting their pictures on an app. So you virtually cut them away from all government services, all kind of information from the world. And I believe, as do many others, people like Apar Gupta, Gautam Bhatia, Srinivas Kodali, many others have written, that the idea of an internet ban is to actually prevent the actual state of information from come out. Manipur is geographically very distant. It is not easy for people to go and report, particularly small independent news platforms like yours or The Wire or Scroll, or Caravan. It is not easy for them to go and report from there. It requires large amount of resources. So, and if you block the internet, then it becomes even more difficult for information to come out. And by blocking out that information, you can create the kind of narrative that you would want to create with the help of dominant news channels and newspapers, which completely reflect the views of the government. The fact that these gross incidents of sexual violence and sexual assault could only come out after 70 odd days. The FIRs were not acted upon. And
that too after a video that was released, which went viral, and only then the state government as well as the union government was forced to talk about this.
Or even the Supreme Court was forced to act on
exactly.
it. The fact of the matter is that Supreme Court had been approached multiple times by various people during the summer vacations and otherwise, and it refused to act on it. So the information has power, and that kind of information when comes out would embarrasses the government, puts it in a very difficult situation. So it does not want that information to come out. And the reason for the internet went ban very clearly was to prevent free flow of information, particularly in the hands of the independent media platforms and other civil society activists who could then hold the government to account.
And also, Sushant, you were talking about political direction for the army or the forces there, or even to the state government. Uh, you know, probably things would have been different, or probably things would have been dealt in a different way if the prime minister had visited Manipur immediately after the violence. Yes, the prime minister is looking the other way. We all know he's refusing to speak about this. He has just spoken about one incident, but he has refused to speak about the situation in a larger context. But things would have been different if the prime minister had gone there, because the home minister went there. The violence did not stop. It's still continuing. But if the prime minister was there on ground, probably things would have been different.
Oh, definitely. There's no doubt about it. This is the bounden duty of the leader of the country, of the prime minister, to go where more than 160, 170 people are dead, more than 60,000 people are rendered homeless, more than 300 churches have been burnt and destroyed. This is a religious minority in India whose places of worship have been destroyed. More than 200 villages have been burnt. There's no business for the prime minister of India to not go there. Whether it is Mr. Modi or if anyone else would have been the prime minister, I would have still maintained that it is the leadership's responsibility, both moral and political, to go there. The fact that it is a state ruled by his own party, the fact that he has gone there and campaigned in that state, there is no excuse. There is no reason why Mr. Modi should not be going there. The blame solely lies on him for not going there, or for not even speaking about him, or for not even publicly chairing a meeting on Manipur. He has not publicly chaired a meeting on Manipur so far. He has not issued a statement on Manipur so far. He has not traveled to Manipur so far. He has not demonstrated any action on Manipur so far. It's almost that he wants to, he's dealing with it the way in which he has dealt with the Ladakh border crisis with China. That if I do not talk about it, the crisis will perhaps go away. If I do not answer questions in Parliament, the crisis will go away. This was the same thing which we saw with the allegations against Mr. Adani's business group. That he chose to look away. This is something which we saw during the second wave of COVID, when there was major oxygen crisis shortage in the country. He chose to simply vanish and not look at that point in time. But the crisis in Manipur is not going away after 90 days. This is not the oxygen crisis of COVID, or this is not allegations against Mr. Adani. This is a crisis which affects human lives in a very, very deep manner. And this is a border state in which the crisis is playing out. It has already spilled over into the states of Mizoram and Nagaland and Assam, and also into neighboring countries like Myanmar. So this has consequences, strategic consequences. This has effects which go well beyond that particular state. The fact that the Indian Army and the Indian security forces are being forced to look inwards while they should be focusing on the China border. These are strategic consequences of his silence, and the country has to pay the price for that kind of silence that Mr. Modi is maintaining, or the fact that he is not visiting the state.
But can Prime Minister afford to remain silent on this issue, particularly on what's happening in Manipur? And like you said, the fire is also spreading to other parts of northeastern states. It is no longer something that is restricted to Manipur. It's a matter of internal security. It's a matter of national security. Can the Prime Minister afford to remain silent? Or can the union government not do anything about it? Even the Home Minister, I don't know, at multiple levels there have been failure, because when we expect the Home Minister to visit Manipur and to try and resolve the situation, we see him traveling to Tamil Nadu and flagging off a Padayatra, or like going to Telangana, or to any other pole-bound state. So can the union government look the other way, and like you said, can they hope that the fire that is there in Manipur will be doused on its own?
Shabbir, you have answered the question. Can they? Who knows? They've gotten away with worse. Who would have thought that China would sit on 2,000 square kilometer of Indian territory, or deny India 26 of 65 patrolling points, and the government would look away? So the blame goes to a lot of erstwhile, profession that you and I were both part of at one point in time. The fact that a large number of Indian journalists, Indian platforms, whether they are newspapers, whether they are television channels, are unwilling to hold this government to account, are unwilling to call out the government for what are very clearly serious failures of governance, is what is causing us, is lies at the core of this problem. If you, as you said, if there were 9 p.m. debates happening about why is Mr. Modi silent on Manipur, or why has Mr. Amit Shah not kept his promise of going back to Manipur after 15 days, or why is China sitting on our territory? If you had those 9 p.m. debates on television channels, if the news was on front pages calling out Mr. Modi's silence or Mr. Modi's lack of interest in Manipur, the impact would have been definitely very different from what it is today.
Right, Sushant. Thank you so much for talking to us and sharing your views on the grim situation that is there in Manipur. We hope that the situation improves. We'll also be keeping a close watch on the developments, and I'll get in touch with you again, Sushant. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shabbir. And along with peace, I would also want justice for those
Yeah.
who have been done wrong against. It's just not about reduction of violence and peace. It's also about justice for the people. Justice has to be delivered. Thank you so much, Shabbir.
Thank you. Thank you, Sushant.